Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium Weekly News Roundup. This is Rofik Pramanik with top stories. Clinton's foreign policy plan would start World War III, said Donald Trump. North Carolina voters flood polls after voting battle. Calais jungle fires rage across migrant camp. New truce in Syria's Aleppo ruled out by Russia. Get ready for next election, said Prime Minister to Awami League leaders, activists. Quetta attack, militant killed dozens at Balochistan Police College. 2016 Mediterranean refugee deaths hit record 3,800, said United Nations. Those are the headlines. Now the details. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has said Hillary Clinton's foreign policy plan in Syria would trigger World War III. He said the US should focus on defeating the so-called Islamic State rather than convincing Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to stand down. Mrs. Clinton has been proposing a no-fly zone over Syria, which some say could lead to conflict with Russian jets. Mr. Trump also attacked Republicans for not uniting behind his candidacy. If we had party unity, we couldn't lose this election to Hillary Clinton, he told. Reuters news agency at Trump National Doral Golf Resort in Miami, Florida, the Republican standard-bearer struck an apocalyptic tone when criticizing his Democratic rival's plan to control Syrian airspace. You are going to end up in World War III over Syria if we listen to Hillary Clinton, Mr. Trump said. You are not fighting Syria anymore. You are fighting Syria, Russia and Iran. All right. Russia is a nuclear country, but a country where the nukes work as opposed to other countries that talk. He also suggested Mrs. Clinton would be unable to talk with Russian President Vladimir Putin after her sharp criticism of him. Charlotte, United States lines were long and excitement high as people queued in unusually hot fall weather on the first day of early voting in North Carolina. Some 162,000 people cast their ballots on Thursday, according to numbers given the state's Board of Elections. The voting season follows a month of legal wrangling over polling schedules and other voting regulations that rights advocates and federal court said disproportionately affected African Americans, a demographic that generally support the Democrats. We are going blue, said Bill Jones, a 69-year-old African American, referring to the color of the Democratic Party. He waited for 2 hours outside the University City Regional Library to vote. In 2008, Barack Obama reversed decades of Republican election wins in North Carolina. But in 2012, the state flipped Republican again. In an average of state polls, Democrat Hillary Clinton is now ahead of Republican Donald Trump at 45.8 to 43.3%. Fires are raging across parts of the jungle migrant camp in Calais 3 days into a French operation to demolish it. It was unclear who set the dozens of fires overnight, and in the morning the clearance begins on Monday and about 4,000 migrants out of some 7,000 have been taken from the squalid camp to shelters around France. The prefect of Pas-de-Calais said authorities now expected to finish the evacuation operation on Wednesday. The camp has become a key symbol of Europeans' migration crisis, with its residents desperate to reach the UK. The BBC's Simon Jones at the camp says hearts were set on fire overnight on the main street leading into the camp, leaving them in ashes. He says this may have been a last act of defiance from migrants who did not want to leave and did not want to see their shelters taken down by the authorities. Many of the makeshift shops that had been set up were destroyed, and a London bus used by a charity to help women and children was torched. The Belgian government has announced that due to regional divisions, it cannot give the necessary backing to the European Union's free trade deal with Canada, making it unlikely that the bloc can sign deal on time. Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel said on Monday that European Union leaders Canada had asked for a clear commitment, and the clear answer at this stage is no. Michel said the French-speaking region of Wallonia and other regional administrations refused to give the federal government the go-ahead. The federal government, the German community and Flanders said yes, while Wallonia, the Brussels city government and the French community said no. He added a deadline has been set late on Monday for the Belgian government to agree on a deal. Belgium's failure to reach a favorable decision is likely to force the European Union to call off a planned signing summit on Thursday with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The deal needs unanimity among the 28 EU nations, and Belgium is the only approval lacking since it needs the backing of all its regions. Russia says it is not currently considering a new truce in the Syrian city of Aleppo after a brief ceasefire ended over the weekend on Thursday. Russia had announced an 11-hour ceasefire to allow civilians, anti-government fighters and injured people to leave opposition-controlled eastern Aleppo, promising them safe passage. It later extended the ceasefire for another 2 days. The fighters, however, rejected the offer. The question of renewing the humanitarian force is not relevant now. Sergei Ryabkov, Deputy Foreign Minister, told Interfax News Agency on Monday in the first official comment from Moscow on why it did not extend the ceasefire further. In order to renew the ceasefire, our opponents must ensure appropriate behavior by the anti-government that in particular sabotaged the medical evacuation that was intended during the humanitarian pause. Ryabkov chided the US-led coalition, saying that it was criticizing Syria and Russia instead of really exerting influence on the opposition, the rebels. Over the last 3 days, what was needed did not happen, he said. Ryabkov also said that he did not see the conditions for ministerial level negotiations on Syria before the US elections on November 8, after a loose meeting on October 15 that ended with no breakthrough. At least 58 cadets and girls have been killed after militants attacked a police college in the Pakistan city of Quetta, officials say. 3 militants wearing suicide bomb vests entered the college late on Monday, reportedly taking hostage. A major security operation lasted 4 hours and all attackers were killed. No group has said it carried out the assault, but Quetta has seen similar attacks by separatist and Islamist militants in recent years. Hundreds of trainees were evacuated from Balochistan Police College as troops arrived to repel the militants. Local media reported at least 3 explosions at the scene. I saw 3 men in camouflage whose faces were hidden carrying Kalashnikovs, one cadet said. According to AFP news agency, they started firing and entered the dormitory, but I managed to escape over a wall. The police academy is home to hundreds of students, and many of the cadets who died or killed in the blast, said Major General Sher Afghan of the Frontier Corps. The exact sequence of events is unclear, but there was intermittent exchange of fire between the attackers and security forces for several hours. According to Down newspaper, there were also reports of hostage situation. More than 100 people, mostly trainees, were injured. Pakistan's army and the Parliamentary Frontier Corps took part in the military counter operation. which Balochistan Provincial Home Minister Mir Sarfaraz Ahmed Bakhti said was now over. Two of the militants died after detonating their bomb vest and one was killed by security forces. Officials blamed a faction of the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi militant group and said the attackers were in communication with operatives in Afghanistan. Quetta is the capital of Balochistan province, which is battling an insurgency as well as Islamist militants with violent attacks common. Likelihood of drowning en route to Europe spiral to 1 in 88, says United Nations, with most deaths reported off Libyan shore. At least 3,800 refugees have died in the Mediterranean Sea while trying to reach Europe so far this year, making 2016 the deadliest year on record, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. William Spindler, the spokesman for the Geneva-based agency, announced the green milestone on Twitter on Wednesday. We are receiving more reports updates in the Med. Spindler tweeted on Wednesday, "We can now confirm that at least 3,800 people have died, making 2016 the deadliest ever. From one death for every 269 arrivals last year. In 2016, the likelihood of dying has spiraled to 1 in 88, he added in a statement published on the agency's website. More refugee deaths are reported off the Libyan shore on Wednesday as the EU's Border and Coast Guard. As the EU's Border and Coast Guard agency Frontex warned that rescue missions near the troubled North African nation are getting ever more dangerous. The Doctors Without Borders charity said one of its latest rescue vessels picked up 25 bodies and 170 survivors from an overcrowded rubber boat some 48 kilometers off the coast of Libya. The rescue operations are becoming a race through a maritime graveyard, he added. Of MS of Migration Operation, Stefano Argengiano said in an online statement. Viewers, we will take a short break. Stay with us. We are back in a moment with the headlines here. Get ready for next election, said Prime Minister, Awami League leaders, activists. United Nations calls for probe into attacks on Rohingya in Myanmar. Spain urged not to allow refueling of Russian warship. Iranian-American Robin Shahani sentenced for spying. Hasina urges Bangladesh Chhatra League leaders, activists to be patriotic. Let's move to the next news. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Monday asked Awami League leaders and activists to get ready for the next general election and make the... We have 2 years and 2 months of our tenure in hand. The election process will start 3 months prior to that. We don't have plenty of time, so I request to you to utilize the time properly apart from making the organization stronger, she said. Sheikh Hasina, also the Awami League chief, said this when top party leaders from different levels of the country come to her official residence, Ganobhavan, to greet her for being re-elected as the party president. She asked the party leaders and activists to spread the development activities taken by the Awami League government in recent years for the welfare of people. To tell them, if you cast your votes again for Awami League, you will get even more. People will know. You have to start telling this right now, well before the election schedule is. Prime Minister went on saying, if we don't tell this, how people will know. You have to start telling this right now, well before the election schedule is announced. You have to put this information into people's words, she said. United Nations human rights experts want Myanmar to investigate allegations that security forces have killed unarmed civilians, burned villages and made arbitrary arrests in Muslims majority region where a crackdown has followed attacks on border police. Aid agency says up to 15,000 people believed to be mostly Rohingya Muslims have been displaced since armed men launched coordinated attacks on 3 posts along the northwestern border with Bangladesh on October 9. The government, which is led by the party of Aung San Suu Kyi, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, has characterized the response of security forces as a carefully targeted sweep of northern Rakhine State's Mongdo township in search of the perpetrators. Officials say security forces have killed 30 attackers and detained 53 suspects while searching for 400 suspected Rohingya fighters who seized weapons from border police. Rights group and sources from the mostly stateless Rohingya community say civilians are bearing the brunt of the military-led operation. They say the death toll from the violence is higher than reported. Yang Lee, the UN envoy on human rights in Myanmar, said she had received repeated allegations of arbitrary arrest as well as extrajudicial killings occurring within the context of the security operations conducted by the authorities in search of the alleged attackers. Spain is coming under pressure from NATO allies not to allow the refueling of Russian warship bound for Syria. The Spanish government is now reviewing the permit for refueling at its enclave of Ceuta in North Africa. The UK said it would be extremely concerned if the refueling went ahead. NATO expressed concern that the ships could be used to help bomb civilians in Aleppo, but said the final decision on resupply rested with Spain. The battle group has been sailing for the past week from Russia via the English Channel to the Mediterranean. It was expected to pass through the Strait of Gibraltar on Wednesday. The warships were then due to take on fuel and supplies at Ceuta on the Moroccan coast. The latest stopovers which have been requested are now being revised based on the information which we are receiving from our allies and from the Russian authorities themselves. A statement from Spain's foreign minister said the ministry added that Russian ships have been a frequent user of Ceuta since 2011 and that each request was considered on a case-by-case basis. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg warned that warship could be used to target civilians in Syria. We are concerned and I have expressed that very clearly about the potential use of this battle group to increase Russia's ability and to be a platform for airstrike against Syria, he told journalists on Tuesday. Rovin Shahini, convicted of aiding a hostile government, says he will go on hunger strike until he is freed or dies. An Iranian American held in Tehran has reportedly been sentenced to 18 years in prison for collaboration with a hostile government. Yet another dual nation convicted in a secret trial since Iran's nuclear deal with world powers. The sentence handed down to Rovin Shahini, a 46-year-old graduate student who lives in San Diego, California, is the harshest yet for those detained in what analysts believe is a plan to use them as bargaining chiefs in future negotiations. Shahini told Vice News in an interview aired late on Monday that he just laughed after hearing his sentence. He acknowledged supporting the protest that followed Iran's disputed 2009 presidential election, but denied being involved in any sort of spying. Whatever information they had is all the pictures I posted in Facebook, in my blog, and they use all that evidence to accuse me, Shahini said in a telephone call from prison. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Wednesday reiterated her call to all to stay alert so that war criminals and those who killed innocent people in the name of movement and engaged in money laundering can never return to power. We won't let anyone play ducks and drakes with the fate of the people of Bangladesh. I call upon all so that war criminals, Al-Badrs and Razakars and those who killed innocent people in the name of movement engaged in money laundering and looting and embezzled the funds of orphanages can never get back to power, she said. Now the news on science and environment. Levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere have surged past an important threshold and may not dip below it for many generations. The 400 parts per million benchmark was broken globally the first time in recorded history in 2015. But according to the World Meteorological Organization, 2016 will likely be the first full year to exceed the mark. The high levels can be partly attributed to a strong El Nino event. While human emissions of carbon dioxide remained fairly static between 2014 and 2015, the onset of a strong El Nino weather phenomenon caused a spike in levels of the gas in the atmosphere. That's because the drought conditions in tropical regions produced by El Nino meant that vegetation was less able to absorb carbon dioxide. There were also extra emissions from fires sparked by the drier conditions. In its annual greenhouse gas bulletin, the World Meteorological Organization says the conditions helped push the growth in the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere above the average for the last 10 years. Global wildlife populations have fallen by 58% since 1970, a report says. The Living Planet assessment by the Geological Society of London and WWF suggests that if the trend continues, that decline could reach two-thirds among vertebrates by 2020. The figure suggests that animals living in lakes, rivers and wetlands are suffering the biggest losses. Human activity including habitat loss, wildlife trade, pollution and climate change is attributed to the decline. Dr. Mike Barrett, head of science and policy of WWF, said it's pretty clear under business as usual we will see continued declines in this wildlife population. But I think now we have reached a point where there is not really any excuse to let this carry on. We know what the causes are and we know what the scale of the impact that humans are having on nature and on wildlife populations. It really is now down to us to act. However, the methodology of the report has been criticized. Now the news on technology. Think of virtual reality and you will probably conjure up images of fantastical landscape in a game of film set. But VR can also be embedded in reality to give people more understanding of the world around them. Increasingly, it is being used as a tool by journalists, teachers, healthcare workers and retailers. Surveys suggest that while 99% of people have heard of autism, only 16% really understand what it means. In the UK, more than a quarter of autistic people have been asked to leave a public plane such as a restaurant. In order to address this, the UK's National Autistic Society made a VR films this summer to show people what it was likely to live with the conditions. The film takes viewers on a journey with a young autistic boy. As he walks around a shopping center, they can experience the sensory overload he experiences as he walks around. President Barack Obama has disclosed that his youngest daughter recently mocked him on Snapchat. The US leader said Sasha had recorded him discussing the social network at a family dinner and then quickly posted a reaction to her friends. In July, he said she also tweets leading several media outlets to try to identify her account. It remains secret. Likewise, a copy of the described Snapchat post has not been made public. Messages posted to the app are designed to disappear after being viewed for within a short period of time. But there are ways to circumvent the restriction. Sasha gave me instruction on Snapchat. He said, one night at dinner we were sitting there and I had read that Snapchat was becoming really popular among her age cohort. So I said, so tell me about Snapchat. England rescued a 22-run victory on the final morning of an intriguing first test in Chittagong as the man of the match. Ben Stokes took the final 2 wickets. Bangladesh began the day needing 33 to beat England for the first time in a test match with 2 wickets remaining. They calmly added 10 runs before Taijul Islam was given out LBW after a review. 2 balls later, Stokes removed last man Shafiul Islam, who was given out LBW and failed to overturn it on review as Bangladesh were dismissed for 263. Going into the game, the Tigers had won just 7 of their 93 tests, beating only Zimbabwe and an understrength West Indies. They have another opportunity in the second and final test of the series, which begins in Dhaka on Friday. As Cleveland Indians play Chicago Cubs in one of the most anticipated baseball games, activists take aim at mascot. A Native American group protested outside one of the most anticipated World Series baseball games to decry what has been described as the most offensive logo in U.S. sports, the cheap Wahoo caricature used by the Cleveland Indians. The long-standing logo, which appears on their team jerseys, depicts a grinning red-faced cartoon with a feather headband. Hundreds of Native American activists staged their protest as the game was played out on Tuesday at the Progressive Field Baseball Park, the first of 7 matches between the rivals and the first World Series game for the Cleveland Indians in 2 decades. New Zealand's wicketkeeper Vijay Watling celebrates with terminus after bowler Michelle Centre dismissed Indians batsman Hardik Pandey during the 4th one-day international match between India and New Zealand at the Jharkhand State Cricket Association Stadium complex in Ranchi on 26 October 2016. Fast bowler Tim Sodhi and James Neesham ran through India's middle order to help New Zealand to a 19-run series, levelling winning the 4th one-day international Ranchi on Wednesday. Sodhi and Neesham shared 5 wickets between them to bowl out India for 241 in 48 overs and 4 balls. Viewers, let's have a look Millennium Weekly News Roundup recap. Clinton's foreign policy plan would start World War III, said Donald Trump. North Carolina voters flood polls after voting battle. Calais jungle fires rage across migrant camp. New troops in Syria's Aleppo ruled out by Russia. Get ready for next election, said Prime Minister to Awami League leaders, activists. Quetta attack, militant killed dozens at Balochistan Police College. 2016 Mediterranean refugee deaths hit record 3,800, said United Nations. You are up to date with our top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log in www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you and stay with Millennium TV. Allah Hafiz.